Nunzio, welcome to the Exit Plan Summit. I'm really
Thank
happy
you,
to have
Scott.
you. Really happy to have you here. So,
Thank you.
a little bit of background for us is we've kind of known each other now for about 2 months because you spoke at a business sales summit that was in Toronto. That's where you're based out of Toronto, and that's
Yeah.
how we initially connected. And it was almost like fireworks because what you want and what I'm trying to achieve, like getting that knowledge out to business owners to help them transition, it's kind of like your passion, right? So I'm really excited to have you on today and just get that information kind of out of your head because you've been in the space for so long and get it to the listeners and the attendees of the Exit Plan Summit. So welcome again.
Thank you. And you're absolutely right. We align on many things. And I think I come to the table with a unique perspective because, I'm not in the business brokerage business. I was an
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneur trying to sell my own business. So, I come from this different perspective where I'm just looking to empower people to love what they do. That's really the foundation of our marketplace. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, for sure. It's great to have you here. So you touched a bit there on your background, but maybe give us a little bit more into how you got into this space.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I guess my tagline, as is ex pro hockey player turned entrepreneur, and that's how my story starts. So, played some semi professional hockey. Found myself, at the end of my career, asking that difficult question of, should I try harder or should I walk away from a game that was very important to me. And I decided to walk away, and I ended up in business school. While I was attending business school, I started a little business with a friend of mine. We got it up to a certain point. We were very excited about it. But then, I believe it was maybe a year or two later, we started realizing that, we didn't have the resources or the expertise to really grow this business. So I
Mm-hmm.
started looking for options to try and sell it because I said there has to be someone out there that is interested in buying this established business and growing it more.
Mm-hmm.
And this was around 2011, 2012, and my experience was not that great. I was hit with realtors that would say I'd rather sell a house. I
Yeah.
was hit with business brokers that said you guys are way too small for us. And then at that time, a lot of the options to sell online, the user experience wasn't there.
Yeah.
It was pretty much directories littered with advertisement. So that experience just didn't sit well with me. And then publicly announcing the sale at that time really didn't sit well with me as well. So I launched into this discovery stage where I was looking into this pain point. I said, am I the only one out there? And as I was looking into this pain point, I discovered a couple global trends that really excited me. So the first, which we're all aware of, is the amount of baby boomers, especially in the micro market,
Mm-hmm.
are looking to retire and exit. So I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. The second was just the popularity of franchising and people wanting to be their own boss. The third was the amount of foreign investors that were interested in buying North American businesses for immigration reasons. And the last one that really excited me, and this was 2011, was I already started seeing this mindset shift where
Mm-hmm.
people, started thinking about, I don't want to work in a 9 to 5. I want to be my own boss.
Mm-hmm.
I want to control my life. I want to live life on my terms, and I want to really do something on my own. And at that time, the go-to story was entrepreneurship,
Yes.
entrepreneurship, entrepreneurship. You find this business, or you identify a pain, you launch this business in your garage, and you become a billionaire. And that was a popular narrative.
Yeah.
And I started digging a little bit deeper and saying there's a second narrative that is just as important and valuable, and that could bring a lot of opportunity to people's lives. And it's entrepreneurship through acquisition.
Yeah.
You know, finding that established business that suits your lifestyle, that you're passionate about, and that you could grow. And I just fell in love with the space,
Mm-hmm.
right? I did some more digging, and found, a little bit more concrete problems around commissions and micro businesses really, not not valuing commissions, but afraid of commissions as far as seeing a big chunk of their selling prices go to a broker that they may need for retirement or a next venture. I start seeing, a lot of conversations
Let me
around,
grab
like,
one thing out that you said, because I just want to make sure for our listeners. You've said
yeah,
micro businesses a couple times, and what does that mean to you? Like,
yeah. So the micro market, and this is where we live, are businesses that are valued 5 million and under.
yeah,
So these really small mom and pop shops. That's the world we live in.
hmm,
And most of the conversations for those businesses or their problem or pain points is around, like I said, that commission,
yeah,
or just the amount of time that has to be put into finding a buyer. And also on the flip side, there are some, many brokers that really don't want to waste time or invest a lot of time into micro deals, right?
hmm,
So we saw ourselves, as a perfect platform and community where we could create something seamless, resourceful, and supportive for business owners, franchise owners, and business brokers, where they could all connect, and
yeah,
it's a win-win for everyone. And
yeah.
that's what we've been doing.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is kind of like what got you into it. And then the real aha was there needs to be a community, a platform where people can connect at essentially a lower cost. It's like, let's just get these people and in a more professional way.
Yeah, absolutely. I always like to have this conversation when I'm talking on podcasts or being interviewed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when it comes to the micro market, there are many business owners that need a business broker,
Mm-hmm.
and we're all for that. We have a full serve option where we connect small business owners with brokers if needed. But there are also a chunk of business owners that have experience or have an acquisition team on hand, where they're just looking to connect with buyers and go through the next steps during due diligence and the purchase and sale. So, we're a marketplace where we're balancing that,
Mm-hmm.
providing a great marketing tool for brokers and providing great opportunity for business owners to exit.
Yeah, for sure. And then I mean, if I click over to your other slide here, this is your site. It's buyandsellabusiness.com. And it's not really our topic of today because we're talking about, but I want to feature it because I mean the site is actually fantastic. So for those that are listening and like thinking about listing, make sure you go check the site out. Uh,
Thank you.
but our topic today here, and because you've been in the space for so long, having sold your own company and like gone through the battles of that and been in the micro space and seen all these different businesses come through the micro space and all the challenges, the topic that we're talking about today is how to create a sellable business, right? And a lot of the
Yeah.
work that you do, and for people that they are probably just being introduced to you now, every single month you do a buyer call where you get a bunch of buyers on and kind of educate them on purchasing a business. So a lot of your efforts go into the education side of things, and it seems to me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's angled a little bit more to the buy side. So I think it's a nice for us to have this conversation on what makes a business sellable, because the buyers at the end of the day are the ones that are purchasing these things, right? So we kind of want to cater to
Yeah.
their needs a certain extent.
Absolutely. So the foundation of our entire marketplace and platform is education and building community. So it's a very, very important foundation, and we prioritize all sorts of campaigns around that. And as far as your question, how do you create or find a sellable business? It's extremely important, because one thing that I've discovered is a valuable and profitable business is not always a sellable business, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a major difference between that, and a lot of people don't understand that. So we've launched a lot of campaigns and educational workshops around what makes a sellable business, and it's what we've pretty much experienced for the last 6-7 years of seeing the businesses that sell and the businesses that don't. And primarily it comes down to what we like to call the three pillars to creating or finding a sellable business.
Mm-hmm.
And I could go through them if you like right now.
Oh, I am here to go through those. I think that's what the listener
Okay.
wants. Like,
Okay.
what
Okay.
are these pillars? Like where
Yeah.
do people get knocked down? Where are they going to have those pitfalls they need to watch out for? That's really where want to get that message out.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I'll go through them. So the first is around timing. So when you're buying a business, you really need to know when to buy a business, and you need to base that off what we call SET. So
Mhm.
social, economic, and tech trends. It's an internal model we use actually at buyandsellbusiness.com when we're developing products, services, marketing campaigns, and all sorts of other business strategies. But I guess the main theme around this pillar is you need to remember you're not buying a business for today, you're buying it for future opportunities.
Mhm.
So, an example is if you were looking to buy a taxi company, due to innovation in that space, the opportunity and timing has definitely passed.
Mhm.
We wouldn't recommend, buying a taxi company because the truth is, markets change, consumers change, and technology changes, and all of that could hurt the valuation of a business and the opportunities within certain sectors. So you really, really need to audit timing from a social, economic, and tech perspective. Also, in addition to timing, this pillar really talks about you know um, the buyer having to focus on figuring out how unique this business is and how big the market size is.
Mhm.
Um, we always tell buyers that they really really need to take that serious because they're going to devote a ton of their life to this business. So that prize needs to be clear and big enough, right?
Yeah.
Um, the second pillar is around business model. So a buyer needs to really find a business model with a strong and sustainable business model. And
Mhm.
and we've seen premiums go to businesses that have monthly and annual recurring revenue. But overall, a buyer needs to find a business with um, growing, um, profitable and growing revenues with little peaks and valleys, right? So you should look for a positive and predictable cash flow. The next is you want to find financials that are organized and up to date and prepared properly. In our experience, most buyers want to see 3 to 5 years of financials in order to identify some sort of pattern or projection. Um, but when it comes to the main theme of this pillar, it really comes down to figuring out if the financial performance and the business model can be upheld for the foreseeable future. That's what this pillar is really about.
It's
And then the last, yeah,
Yeah,
after
no,
you.
I'm gonna pause there because I mean, there's really interesting information for those that are, at the summit here that are from on the exit side, like these are sellers, right? I think that even looking at pillar and one, pillar two, it seems to me that it's very much future oriented, right? So, okay,
Yes.
we're looking at, what this company did from pillar two. It's like, is it financially stable in the past, and what's that going to look like in the future? And then pillar one is it's more of the external. It's like, okay, the
Yeah.
external environment. So we have our social, we have our economical, and we have our trends, and like what's happening. So how's that going to affect this business? So I think that's interesting for a seller to think about that because it's hard when you've been on the sales side, your whole mindset is just kind of get me out. It's like I'm done. You
Yeah.
aren't really future thinking, and to
Yeah.
to really get this business to the point where it's like future sales, like put that future hat on. Oh man, these pillars. Okay, what's number three?
No, but you're absolutely right, and I
Yeah.
think there's a stigma around that. Most business owners and entrepreneurs, like when I was in business school, there was this stigma around, an entrepreneur with an exit plan isn't really an entrepreneur, right?
Right.
And I disagree. I sort of disagree. Like for example, buyandsellbusiness.com, you know, I love the marketplace we've created. I love the organization we created. I love the business we created. I have no thoughts of exiting, but it doesn't mean that I'm not building the business where it can eventually exit if it needs to, right?
Yeah.
So even from a seller side, these three pillars apply to sellers. Like you need to think about these three pillars and you need to build a sellable business
Mm.
even if you have no plans of selling
Yeah.
because you want to be in a position where you're not going to there's not going to be that downward pressure on your valuation because timing is off or because your financials are a mess.
Yeah.
And I think the third pillar is the most important one out of all of them.
Mhm.
And it deals with creating a self-sufficient business. Okay. This is also known in our space, and you've probably heard it before, the Switzerland structure,
Yes.
right? You don't want to build a business that's dependent on one leader, one employee, one supplier, one customer, right?
Mhm.
No buyer wants to enter a business with so many unknowns and that fear of losing that one client or that big supplier that could jeopardize everything.
Yes.
So what we notice is this concept sound, it seems pretty easy and straightforward, but many business owners disregard it. And through our experience over the last 6-7 years, we've noticed that if there's less dependency in the business operations, it's a more valuable and sellable business. And if the current business owner, for example, can't be replaced, then it may be a bad deal.
Yeah. And that, I mean, that's when you say that third pillar is the most important. And from looking from the buy side, in being a broker in the space, like that's what I see. It's like buyers will look at that almost first. First, they'll look at revenue. They go, okay, let's make sure that this is actually sustainable. And then they'll go, okay, what does it look like without the owner in it? And that, I mean,
Yeah.
it seems to be such a simple question because when the owner leaves, the owner's not there. But that sometimes it's bizarre to think about that when you're actually in your business on a day-to-day running it with what does it look like when you extract yourself out, right? Is it a house of
It's
cards? Does it fall apart?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, but it's so true. And it's another, I think this is another stigma. A lot of people think that when they, and listen, I think there's a difference between also building a hobby business
Yeah.
and building, a business that you want to scale, grow, and set up for potentially an exit. Like, yes, there are differences, but, if we're just talking about, that average business that potentially wants to exit,
Mhm.
a lot of these business owners, they build businesses where they are the business.
Yeah.
And it, and it's a very hard thing to get through business owners where, listen, that's not always the best approach,
Mhm.
right? A quick example, my father, obviously this is a different sector, so take it with a grain of salt, but my father is a chartered accountant. He had his own practice growing up, and I remember as a little kid, I'd be 10, 11 years old, sitting in his office, and every person that walked in would say, "Hi, is Frank in?" And the secretary would say, "No, but so and so could help you." "Oh, it's okay. When's Frank coming back in? I'll wait for him, or I'll come back later." Right there, that to me is a massive problem, right? His firm was dependent just on him. He was the firm, right? So I think what ends up happening is, these business owners, have to sit back and they have to start creating a business that can run without them. And it starts, by developing operating principles and processes and company values,
Mhm.
right? And that starts at the beginning. And if you haven't, then it starts right now. And hopefully you could shift your business to a self-sufficient business over the next 3 to 5 years and exit if that's your plan.
Yeah, I have this slogan that I coined when I started my YouTube channel, but it's every day a step away. And it's just
Yeah.
if that kind of is in your mind that you're not going to be there eventually, that last step's going to take you completely out, then what's all those little steps along the road that takes you to that eventual exit? And it seems overwhelming when you think about it initially when you're a business owner because you're so involved. Like you say, the vast majority of business owners have a touch point on every single component of their company. But if you direct your business for a day, it's like, okay, your phone rings and you answer it. And you just think to yourself, if I wasn't here to take this call, like who would take this call? And
Yeah.
then you just like delegate that call to somebody else. And then you do that with every single task that you have going on. And it doesn't take that long to realize to like kind of eke yourself out, but you just have to start the process, right?
That's
Like
it.
when you in the interactions that you have, like how many businesses do you think, if you were to take a guess at it, like percentage wise, that are they come to market and they get onto your site and they're marketing and they're at that stage where they've actually done that pre-work, or what's the percentage do you think there, the people that have done the pre-work before selling, or the people that are just like tossing stuff up and hoping for the best?
You know, looking at the opportunities, So one thing about our marketplace is we see the business listings and opportunities on the front end. So what's presented. So we really don't get into understanding or knowing if the business is self sufficient or has prepared and proper financials, or we could guess if timing's right based on the sector,
Yeah.
but we really don't know as far as how prepared or sellable that business is when they list on our site. But what we can tell you is 40% of our connections
Mhm.
lead to a successful transaction.
Really?
So using that as kind of an assumption, I would say probably 40% are prepared and ready to go.
That is interesting. So, and if, that's a really high number as far as
It
like,
is, yeah.
yeah,
Industry average, I believe, is about mid 20s. So
yeah,
we're performing 2x industry average.
that's incredible. And then what do you attribute that to?
Yeah, I think for us, I think it comes down to our marketing acumen. Like, I think from a features perspective, yes, we're more cost effective. Yes, we create. Last time we checked the data, we always like to compare ourselves to our big brothers down south.
Yeah.
By the cell, which we have a great relationship with them. We like each other. But we always like to look up to them as our big brother, and we base off what we do compared to them, and
Mhm.
based off of them and their size and scale. We're actually creating 8% more exposure per listing, while being 44% more cost effective. And I think that really
Yeah.
comes down to us. It comes down to our story and our marketing acumen. We've really committed ourselves to empowering people to love what they do. And that message there, it guides our marketing, it guides our culture,
Mhm.
it guides the way we develop products and implement technology. Right? We're really able to attract this highly inspired, motivated, and engaged audience that are really looking to buy and sell.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to me too because I know from like watching you guys, there's been that shift towards the education of both sides, right? So educating the seller, educating the buyer, and I don't see that in other platforms. Like you said, when you came to the marketplace in 2012 or whatever year it was, you very much had Kijiji, Craigslist, like these kind of things. And for sure, it's like even like a Facebook marketplace. Like you're putting up a listing, you don't necessarily know who you're going to connect with. But if you're really connecting with like high quality and bringing both high quality together, it's like you're going to have a higher transaction number and your percentages are going to be better. But I think that shift for you guys over to educating the consumer is probably a big part of that success as well, right? Because if you have somebody that
Absolutely.
knows what they need to do to sell, and you have someone who knows how to properly screen a business to buy it, the success rate would have to go up.
Absolutely. Like I said, it's the foundation, and it's a foundation of what guides us, right? That
Mm,
education, that community, and just that narrative around empowering people to love what they do. Because we do believe that is a very important message, especially now more than ever,
hmm.
right? Where you're seeing people potentially being laid off and contemplating their next steps and thinking about business ownership. And we see ourselves as a way to and a path to business ownership and empowering that person to love what they do. But for us, yeah, that's our whole strategy is around, like you said, that education and that community part,
Hmm.
and we do believe that drives business results for us.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can't see any way that it wouldn't. It's almost like a longer term play, but it gives better results, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think what's important to us as well, which is a hurdle, but we're also very committed to having conversations with brokers as well.
Hmm.
The mindset for brokers to date has always been about volume,
Hmm.
right? They won't, most the great brokers, they actually dig deep into the data and details and understand it. But most brokers are obsessed with volume. So
Hmm.
for example, if you're leveraging, say, a really engaged marketplace or platform like ours, or biz buy sell, um, that potentially gives you a handful of great connections.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's more valuable than, Kijiji or Facebook. Granted, they're free, but they're sending you 100, connections that really don't go anywhere. So unfortunately, a lot of brokers are prioritizing the volume of 100 versus the handful of quality connections. But
Yeah.
we're out there trying to educate, brokers, and let them know the difference, obviously.
Mm-hmm. And I've always said that too, is that I would rather talk to 2 or 3 quality buyers than talk to 100. It just makes more sense, right? Especially when you're dealing with a
Yeah,
sale. You're most often sellers are looking to keep things confidential. It's unnecessary to talk to 80 people that are never going to buy anyhow.
yeah, and you want to protect your time, right?
Yeah.
Whatever you do in life, you want to protect your time, right? So
Mm-hmm. For sure. I was going to throw the question out there because you do these buyer seminars once a month, and you're connected with sellers a lot. What are the major questions that you're seeing come out of those from people that are in the space at that moment in time where they're actually trying to transact?
interesting question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so from a buyer side, we see a lot of questions around financing options,
Mm-hmm.
and or for example, why do I need to sign an NDA, or a seller's asking me to sign an NDA? Like, why do I have to do that? I just want to have initial conversations. So we
Yeah.
see a lot of questions from the buyer side, in those two arenas. But most of the questions actually come from the sellers.
Okay.
And the most popular questions are always around valuation,
Mm-hmm.
or how long will it take, how long will it take to sell my business. Also, we get a ton of questions around, should I use a broker or should I sell on my own?
Mm-hmm.
And also some questions around confidentiality. They want to sell, but they don't want anyone to know they're selling. So balancing that act of creating exposure but also creating privacy, which is a unique challenge. So those are the type of questions we see a lot.
I wouldn't mind digging into a couple of those, like, because
Yeah,
there's all these different ways to sell your company. I find it interesting that the sellers are asking the question, okay, do I sell with a broker? There's always the realtor option. Do I sell on my own?
sure.
Have you figured out a way? And you touched on that earlier in our conversation, that there's different routes for different businesses, right? And there's no right or wrong way to do it. But I'm interested to hear, just even from a personal perspective, like, how would you kind of figure out what business owners should go which route? Is there any like heuristic that you've set up or figured out to do that?
Sure. Yeah. So, once again, when these questions come in, we have initial conversations with them, but we always know we know where we're positioned, and
Yes.
we're that maker, and we're that platform.
Mm-hmm.
So when these questions, go deeper, we always, refer them out to our preferred partners, and we have a slew of preferred partners, from accountants, lawyers, you name it. We have partners that can help our users. But in this question in particular, I've had some soft conversations around that, and for me, it really comes down to experience and an acquisition team. So, for example, there are many other options like management buyouts or exit to community that is gaining popularity as well. And it really depends on, obviously, the type of business and the way they're set up, and how unique they are. But generally, when it comes down to, should you go the broker route, or try and sell yourself, I ask them simply, like, have you ever sold a business before?
Mm-hmm.
If the answer is no, then I would recommend us connecting you with a broker.
Mm-hmm.
If the answer is yes, that's great. Okay, now you have some experience. And then if the second question is, if they've answered yes, is, do you have an acquisition team on hand that can help guide you? Your accountant, your lawyer, your banker, to guide you through the next steps.
Mm-hmm.
And usually, once that's figured out, they really know which way to go.
Yeah, it's interesting because, I mean, for me, I'm agnostic to it all, right? It's the end of the day, it's just get the deal done. Like, if you're trying to exit, then there's different paths to do that. Find the best route for you. I like the answer that you had there, because if you've never done it before, it, and this is from personal experience, like I never had done it before, and I tried 3 times and fell flat on my face, right? And and the reason why that happens is because you make a mistake, you fall, and so you get back up. There's people that have made those mistakes. Like what's that? Mistakes were made, but not by me. I like the name of that book, and that's like Warren Buffett. He's like, yeah, you got to make mistakes, but you aren't the one that has to do it, right? You can learn from other people. So I like that, but you can put a team around you however you want. Like if you have a lawyer you already work with, accountant, you can kind of build a team that'll get you across the finish line. You just need to know the steps, right? So it's different for everybody. And I had kind of a segue. Like I had a call 2 days ago with a person, and it also depends on if you can think about yourself, like what's your level of agreeableness? Like how comfortable are you being in a tough negotiation situation? Because I find that's difficult too. If you aren't going to do the best for yourself negotiating, then maybe you want to bring someone even just for that part, But
it's Scott, it's so true. And that's another piece of the puzzle that, I really don't dig deep in with people, but, just from an entrepreneurship and leadership perspective, a lot of business owners, they have trouble dividing emotions from passion, right? Or they confuse both. And sometimes when you get into selling the first or second biggest asset you possibly own, you could get emotional about it, and that can ruin everything. So you're absolutely right. That's a very important part of it.
Yeah, and you think you won't, and you will. It's impossible not to be emotional about it. Like we're so tied to our companies, right? They are a piece of us. The other one that you talked about there was valuation, and I feel that I'd like to get your feedback on this because I feel that that's something that every owner thinks, okay, that's like the starting point, is like getting the valuation. Where do you feel like it fits into the ecosystem or the process of getting your company across the finish line?
I think so. I think it's a very important part. I think valuations, it's what makes or breaks the deal. In one way you could kill a deal, and in another way you could leave a lot of money on the table. So it's something that needs to be prioritized big time. But the first thing is you need to really focus and be disciplined on creating a sellable business. Like the framework we went through as far as those 3 pillars. If you could create a sellable business, then you could pretty much defend, not any valuation, but you could defend a valuation, right? And then that valuation, really comes down to how strong you are financially, right? And I always tell people you need to pull in a professional to make sure that you have the business model and the timing and and a self-sufficient business that could defend the valuation, but you really need to pin what the appropriate valuation is, because you don't want to leave money on the table. You don't want people to run away from the deal either.
Yeah, I strongly agree with your sentiments. It's you need to know the goalposts. It's like where am I here? So that you don't want money left on the table, but you don't want to be asking too much. Jack Welch, I didn't spend time with him. I did a call with him. That was like one of the big things in my life. Like I was on a call with Jack Welch, before he passed away. But he said like they were doing 300 deals a year at one point with GE, which is just mind-boggling. Like you could actually, the systems you need to have in place to be able to handle that kind of load of acquisitions. But he said you always want to leave a little bit on the table, just a little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit, and that's what kind of makes the deal good, and both parties are always happy with that, right? And they learned that.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Absolutely. But I think also, the goalpost is a great way to think of it as well. So, for example, we have some free tools on our site where people can plug in some numbers, and then we give them kind of like a range. But we always tell them at the end of it, like, listen, this is a range. This is quick and dirty. Always connect with a professional, and we can make that connection for them. But I think knowing what that range is, is probably the first step into really pinning down a valuation that you could defend.
Yeah, and I think the tool on your site, that's fantastic, because the quick and dirty is an element that should be there. It's no different than like the back of the napkin, right? And don't be confused that your buyer's not doing that. Your buyer's sitting down quickly doing the back of the napkin, and that's essentially what they're doing going through the listings. So if you're not even in the ballpark with your back of the napkin, you're kind of toast, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's how we position that tool.
Yeah. I'd be interested to hearing and curious about some of the stats that you have that are coming through the site. It's kind of like almost behind the curtain stuff. Like we have no idea what these stats are, and sometimes they're hard to find. And some of the questions
Yeah.
I had listed here, it's like, what's the average time that it's taking for a business to sell of those 40% that are selling? I mean, the 60 that aren't, I mean, they're going to be stagnate. But of the ones that are selling, how long is that taking? And then are you seeing them, it's a certain size of company that is more attractive to the buyers in the marketplace right now? Like what are you seeing as far as that?
Yeah. So this is important and something that I'm really proud of. So
Mhm.
as an online platform, literally born in the digital era, we've prioritized collecting, organizing, and analyzing, all sorts of data in the micro market for
Mhm.
business and franchise for sale. It's literally our DNA.
Yes.
Biz Buy Sell does a great job at it as well with their insight reports. So I highly recommend everyone check that out as well. But we have a great opportunity to kind of look at how this micro market looks, because it's not public, it's
Yeah.
private. Right?
Yeah.
Uh, so last time I checked our data, from the moment a business is listed to when they sell, on average that takes about 4.8 months. Um, as far as I think the next question you asked was the sweet spot.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we noticed that listings that are priced between 150 to 350,000 get a lot of activity on our platform. Obviously sectors, locations, and there's other variables, but generally that asking price, there's a ton of activity on our platform. As far as I guess the average listing or asking price on our site
Mhm.
is I believe last time I checked, it was about 440,000.
Mhm.
That's what the average business is selling on our site, and we've seen unbelievable outliers. So
Yeah.
once again, we're really committed to this micro market, 5 million and under, but we've seen on the smallest size, $1,000 business listing. It was a
Yeah.
little basket company business, and
Nice.
we've seen a $12 million bed and breakfast in the Rocky Mountains listed,
Yeah.
right? So there are these outliers, but that average price is around 441
That is
thousand.
like, this is incredibly interesting to me because everything else you get is, it's not hearsay, but you like read stuff off blogs. And like for myself, I try and figure out what's that timeline that it takes to sell a company, because that's a question that every seller asks. They're like, how long is this going to
Mhm.
take? Right. And I
Yep.
mean, I'd like to go back to your three pillars on that one, because the time that it takes to actually sell the company is often reflective of the time that was put into the pillars prior. It's like if you put the
Yep.
time in up front and then then you market it and put it up online. But that 4.8, that kind of like 5 months that's nice. That's a good number.
Yeah, it's a good number, but you know what's also a little crazy when you see data out there, like for example, the time it takes to sell a business in the micro market, or average multiplier of earnings, uh, and then you actually collect the data and you look at it and you digest it.
Mm-hmm.
It's very consistent. It kind of validates that, like, these sort of benchmark numbers are there for a reason. For example, most people slap a multiplier of 3x,
Yes.
right? To most sectors. Obviously, every sector is different. Last week, I ran a little activity with the team, and
Sorry,
we
I
literally
gotta pause you
ran.
there because everyone always gets confused. I hope I'll help you pick your thought train back up if I like derailed it there. But the
Yeah,
3x, it's always the question. It's like, what is that getting applied to? And I think for people that are just getting into the space, they're trying to figure out, I sell for 3 times, 10 times, whatever. There's so much misinformation, right? So for
yeah.
yourself, like when you say 3x, what are you thinking that would be applied to? The
We
three
usually
times.
just slap it on. We usually just slap it on earnings.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
So that's how we apply it. But you're absolutely right. There are a ton, and this is why we always recommend you get a professional in, because
Mhm.
there are different methods and calculations to calculate the valuation of a business, and it does vary for industry, right?
Mhm.
And there are some other variables, but for us, we usually slap it on earnings. And when I ran through this activity with my team, we literally pulled all the data of all our active listings and what the average annual earnings were. And
Mhm.
then we pulled data of all our active listings and got the average asking price, which I mentioned was about 440,000. We literally calculated the multiplier and it was 3x on the nose.
No way. That is like
Yeah,
so
yeah.
interesting to
It
me.
blow, it blows my mind. Like
Yeah.
I looked at this number, I'm like, wow. It's almost like that, like that 80-20 rule or 20-80 rule, whatever it's
Yeah.
called. How it, like anything you look into, like literally it works out to like 80-20. It's I'm starting to notice that with our data as well. There's a lot of consistencies in this space when it comes to
Well,
those benchmark numbers.
that's what's so interesting to me. I mean, you can't see those trends until you hit enough volume for it to really like narrow down and pinpoint it. And like
Yeah.
I've always said to sellers, like, well, the reason why it is like floats around that area, that 2.5 to 3.5 and like three right in the
Yeah.
middle, is and this is just a feeling. So I'm not a data. I don't have the data. You have the data, but my feeling is if I'm going to go buy something, I kind of want my money back in 3 years. You know,
Yeah.
I want to
Yeah.
look at the earnings. I'm going to put a certain amount down, and I want to. It's like small business is high risk. Like we all know that being business owners, you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. But it's yeah, I want my money back in 3 years. And I kind of
Yeah.
feel like that drives a little bit of it too.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
But it was interesting. We ran that little test just as a team, and it was just interesting to see that.
So incredible. That's fantastic. All right, there's two questions that we're kind of pushing on our hour here, and there's a couple
Yeah.
questions that I'm going to be asking every single guest. And the one is around like our current environment, which is the COVID environment that we're in right now, and how have you seen that affect whether it's your business or just the general space or just a general commentary on maybe speaking to a seller what they should be thinking about perhaps in this current environment. And I know that's a heavy one because it changes every single day. But
Yeah.
what's your thoughts?
Yeah. It's been tough. It's been
Yeah.
really tough. And kudos to the business owners and entrepreneurs out there that are just finding a way.
Yes.
It really comes down to that. But it's been tough. But our overall activity, I think we've experienced peaks and valleys like any other business uh, may have seen during the pandemic. Um, but we've also built tremendous momentum because more and more people are online.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like I mentioned before, a chunk of people have been laid off and they're contemplating, buying a business as a way to business ownership. Um, so we're positioned pretty well, to offer both buyers and sellers, with a positive online experience. But we've also noticed just from, I guess, like an index perspective, buyer confidence is way up.
Mm-hmm.
And we think that's, or not, we know that's because there are better interest rates. And there's also this assumption from a buyer's perspective that they could probably pin a lower valuation on a business due to the impact from the pandemic.
Yes.
So that's kind of what we're seeing from our side. As far as for a seller, you know, my advice for a seller is, this may have been a signal, to sell, right? 2021 is potentially going to be the perfect storm for business sales, which also means it's going to be a competitive environment,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you really need to defend your valuation, and in order to defend your valuation, like we've chatted, this whole time, is you need to be prepared, you need to be organized, and you need to shift your model to a self-sufficient model,
Mm-hmm.
and a model that is appropriate for the post-COVID world, right?
Yeah.
Last time I checked, each day, each passing day, more and more Canadians are turning 65. I think the stat was one in five will be 65 or older in 2024.
Mm-hmm.
And many of those people are business owners with excellent businesses. So you need to think about that as a seller.
Yeah, fantastic. And the other question that I have, which is the design of it, is to kind of get down to the core, is if you, like, whether you're selling your own business or whether you're advising a buyer or seller, if you had to sell a business in this upcoming year, what's the one thing that you would put as the most important to make sure that you're doing to kind of guarantee success?
Yeah, nice question. So not to be repetitive, but I do believe it's staying focused and disciplined on building not only that valuable business but a sellable business,
Mm-hmm.
which we went through. But the second piece that I didn't touch on is, and I know you asked for one, but I have two.
Yeah, that's fine. No one's going to complain about two.
The second is you really want to focus on building a pandemic resilient business.
Yeah.
And to do that, you need to build a strong digital infrastructure
Mm-hmm.
along with a strong business model that could survive and thrive if another pandemic were to occur. So you need to be leaning on technology. You need to bet on technology because we're not going backwards. So I think everyone, a lot of business owners learn the hard way about how their business could be negatively impacted when they're not visible online or don't have that digital infrastructure to do business.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's such good advice, right? It sometimes can be the red pill that you have to swallow because you may end up shifting your business model a tiny bit so that it can be pandemic resilient. And even the pandemic, well, we're going to get through it, obviously, but it's still going to be in people's mind, right? And for our generation, it's going to be in our mind. For their buyers that are going to be buying over the next 10 years, it's going to be in their mind. So you just want to make sure that you can prove that case that if this were to happen again or some other calamity, it's like your business is going to get through it. And that's why I like you talk about resiliency, and then just make sure that your business is not completely dependent on yourself as the owner. Like these are the things that I pulled out.
And you're absolutely right, Scott. And I think that we all it'd be naive to think that when, say, there is a vaccine or the vaccine is out, or say the pandemic is done, and governments and health officials say, okay, we're back to normal.
Mm-hmm.
We're really not going to go back to normal. Things have changed. Consumer behavior has shifted.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, quick example, you own a restaurant. It'd be crazy not to have, a delivery system, right? Where people order online and you could deliver, right? It'd be crazy not to set up, the inside of your restaurant in a socially distanced manner. Right. Where, you could survive, God forbid it were to happen again.
Yeah.
It's just leaning on technology and doing these things that are a little bit different. Like, for example, have you ever heard of Paramount Fine Foods?
I have not. No.
Okay. So they're probably one of the largest halal food franchises in Canada, and they're actually expanding globally as well. I had the privilege of chatting with the CEO actually and president. His story is actually entrepreneurship through acquisition.
Yeah, cool.
He bought into this business because the owner at the time didn't have enough money to make that business survive. But anyways, I chatted with him, and he launched a business during the pandemic, a restaurant that literally was all tailored to being, social distancing, and all tailored to ordering online. You show up, there's a wall, you press your order, your food is lifted up to you, you take it, and you go out. So, like, thinking in those ways really matters.
Yeah. And I, like you said earlier, but kudos to the business owners, especially the restaurant industry. Like the speed that they've adapted has just been really impressive to me, and you kind of pushing through all of it. So it's incredible. Nunzio, thanks so much for taking the time and being part of the Exit Plan Summit. For those of you, like, people that are out there, I actually have a personal question for you to take up the next 6 minutes, because you get back to people faster than anybody I have ever met in my life. It's like one of these things. It's like, okay, I'll shoot an email off. It's like, whoop, it just comes back with the answer. Like, this guy is like on top of his game. Like, it is incredibly impressive. Is there, and this is just for business owners in general, because we're all in the same community and we're all in the same boat. It's like when that happens, okay, that someone's got their act together to be able to respond so quickly. But is there anything that you do in your business that has allowed you to be able to respond to clients and customers that quickly?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, great question. I'm very protective of my time,
Mm-hmm.
and I leverage my calendar like no one else.
Mm-hmm.
Where my day is scheduled into slots, and it keeps me super focused, super disciplined, and super committed. But for me, communication is super important.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to email me or message me or call me, from 5:30 or maybe 6 a.m. and 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. I'm going to be super responsive because I'm on my game, and I'm trying to respect your time as well. Because I know, for example, if you're asking me a question, you're looking for an answer or some sort of validation so you can move on with your project and get things done.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to respect that for the person that's sending me that email, because that's what I would want. If I'm sending an email, it's because I need some answers, and I'd like to move on so we can get things done. And that's what it's really all about.
Mm-hmm.
Strong commitment, strong communication, and just focused on getting things done as quickly as possible. But listen, there are times, obviously, like right now, someone sent me an email an hour ago, and I'm not going to respond right away.
Yeah.
6 o'clock comes, I'm eating dinner with my family, and my responses are going to be a little bit slower in the evenings. But during the day, you're absolutely right. I'm on it.
Yeah. Well, I want to direct people to buyandsellabusiness.com. I think that's, if they're in the space, that they go there. There's a couple of really cool things that you have on there as I click through the site. One of the new things that you've launched is Biz Perk, which is embedded within a Slack channel. So for those business owners that use Slack, it is a really cool tool to connect with others that are thinking about selling, thinking about buying. And I know you guys have just launched that in the last little bit. So that all that information is on the site as well. So I think that there's, for the audiences watching, they go to your site, and the numbers speak for themselves. I mean, 40%, that's amazing. So yeah, it's definitely a place that they want to be. So I thank you again for your time and being part of the summit. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Scott, for having me. Really appreciate it.
Great. Talk to you in a bit.
Bye.